Let me just start by asking, what was it? What are you looking for? Like Lisa is hoping to get fill in the blank here.
Healthier.
Okay, that's an easy one. I mean, it's an easy one to understand.
Yeah, and just reaching that age where I want to start not reaching that age.
Right. So vitality and age are two totally different things, right? Like you can be vital at 90, you can be unvital at 30. I mean, it's it's not a they don't go hand in hand always. So what we're doing here is putting a program that we already have in place for a method of delivery that's new for us. In other words, we've done anti-aging type of work, and I even hate to use the term anti-aging because it's like, what does anti-aging mean? But it's increasing the health span, increasing the vitality, increasing the performance, increasing and improving lab markers, improving your biological age through very specific activities. We've been doing this for quite a number of years. We've been very successful with it, doing it in a one-on-one approach. And we're now working on developing an approach and a delivery system that we can do en masse for some of the things that we're repeating over and over and over, right? So that's really what we're doing now. So you're happen to be here singularly, but we're doing some classes where there's like half a dozen more people, in each time, right? So and that's why we're recording some of this because it helps us to put it together. The overlying premise that we have that we're working with is that we as humans today live in a relatively unnatural environment. The human body was built for living really in a forest or a forested area, hunting, gathering, foraging for foods, maybe doing a little bit of farming, some cultivating, but we were not built to live in an ultra processed, on our phones, sitting at desks, mostly sedentary, eating foods that aren't meant for us to eat, living in an environment that's relatively unnatural for us. And because of that, our bodies don't function the way that they had functioned in the past. The critical point here that we can focus on is if we were living in a natural environment, we were living in the woods and we were growing up in a tribe or a community, we would have known those things to do throughout our whole life, which berries to eat, which cliffs to avoid. We now live in an environment where we have so much media, so much information coming at us at such a rapid pace and such an unbelievably confusing delivery system that, like, are eggs good for me now or eggs bad? Am I supposed to have maple syrup? Am I not supposed to? Is cholesterol good? Is cholesterol? And you and I are old enough to remember when fat-free donuts and bagels, you can eat as many of those as you want because they're good for you. Don't eat butter because it's bad for you. Don't do this, do that. There were so many different fad diets that came through. We remember, you can remember maybe 20 years ago when everybody was eating fried pork skins when keto came out. Do you remember that? Like keto, everybody's like, there's no way that there's much science behind the number of different health activities and health avenues that we go down. So what we've done is we've put together a very basic program that helps to dispel what works, what doesn't work, and how to actively integrate it into your life. And it's really what it is. Some of the things that we'll be going over, you're like, yeah, I know how to do that. Some of the things like, I had no idea that exists. And then it's a matter of how do we integrate it into your life, specifically for your needs. I'm an N of 1. You're an N of 1. In other words, what works for you doesn't necessarily work for me, and vice versa. Right? We don't have the same needs because we're different humans. But generally, as a human, we all have some basic needs that need to be met. And we focus this program on 4 primary topics. Our diet, the foods we eat, the things we put in our mouth, chew and swallow. Our rest, repair, recuperation system, how we rebuild and repair. Our exercise and activity, and our mental health and our purpose and our mental focus. And those are the four parts of the program that we invest most of our time in. we do discuss some other ancillary components that are really significant, like the communication system within the body. We talk about how the skeletal system, the nervous system, muscular system aren't three separate systems. It's more, it's better known as the locomotion system. We talk about, instead of the GI system and the endocrine system and the bladder and the urinary system, that's really an elimination food processing system. So we're going to start to conceptualize the body in a little bit of a different way, right? And that's really our basic focus. We do start with diet because that's probably the easiest to change and implement. It's probably the one that has the most direct impact, and it's one that is generally the most confusing for people, right? So let me ask you, I'm going to ask you a question. It's kind of a loaded question because I have a follow-up that I know that I'm going to use here. But what is your diet like?
Well, it's different, but all the time. But I usually don't eat breakfast.
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes I don't eat lunch. I try to stay away from carbs. It's primarily whole foods, like meats. I don't do a lot of dairy.
Okay,
So
so
it's a lot of vegetables, meats, and
I'm going to stop you there because the reason I asked this question, I stopped you there, is because I ask this question all the time and I get a similar response. When I asked you what, and I know I put you on the stage here, but I did it on purpose, because when I asked you what your diet was, you told me, I don't eat breakfast, so you told me what your diet isn't. You told me that you sometimes don't eat lunch, because you sometimes did. You told me that you don't eat dairy. You told me multiple things you don't eat. And you mentioned that you ate meat in there once. And it wasn't until you got about the 8th or 9th thing in, you began to say, oh, I eat a vegetable. So the reason that I bring this up is because when we focus on our diet, when I ask you, oh, what's your car like? Oh, it's red. It has 4 wheels. It has a seat. If I ask you, what's your car like? Well, it's not an Audi. I don't drive too fast, right? Or what's your home like? It's not a condo on the beach. It's right. We describe it. When it comes to our diet, we rarely identify our diet because we have such an overwhelming emotional connection and tone to our diet. We don't want to be attacked for our diet. We have a fear of, is my diet even going to be good enough? So we begin starting to defend what we're doing already. And the easiest way to find a path to where we want to go is really focusing and becoming comfortable with where we exist. In other words, if I were to ask you, how do you get to Miami? You would say, well, you go south.
98 I-95.
To 95 and go south. What if you're in Cuba? Well, then you would take a boat north, right? Like where we start really determines the direction that we go, right? So the same thing when we talk about diet. And what I'd like you to do first, and I'm going to give you a couple points of homework. The first thing that I'd like you to do is I want you to become very familiar with what your diet is, not with what your diet isn't.
Okay.
Right? And it doesn't take, like, now you know, like, oh, I can answer that now. I know how to, right? But it's that mental shift. And the more of these mental shifts we can make, the better the progress we're going to have. Right? So that's one thing that I'd like you to do. And an easy way to do this is use on the Practice Better, use the lifestyle, the Practice Better you log on. There's a lifestyle component that allows you to upload your meals.
Yeah, I saw it.
Right? It's a relatively easy thing to do if you just upload the pictures. So you can go on there and start putting in every food. I had, 2 eggs, 1 ounce of butter, 3/4 of a piece of toast. I ate 2/3 of an apple. You can put that in there, and God bless it. It works. And I have patients that do that, and they love tracking. It's a little difficult. I mean, I'm busy. I don't want to do that.
Yeah.
But what I do during the day, and what I'm going to encourage you to do during the day, is just start taking pictures of everything you eat.
Okay.
And then take a minute at one point during the day and just upload all the pictures to that day. This way you have a database of what you're eating. We're going to use that database now to identify where we're starting with foods. We're also going to use that database to help us determine what type of changes are going to be most effective to make to improve your lab values, to improve your sleep, to improve your mental state, to improve your repair, to improve your exercise, to make improvements across the board, right? And it's a very low time cost, super productive activity to do, all right?
Okay.
And that's generally it's something that people can do. I'm going to ask for you also to engage in about an hour's worth of work per week. And that hour doesn't have to sit down, okay, let me get my number 2 pencil, let me get my Scantron, let me start the testing. It's just a matter of getting used to engaging in activities of learning, right? And it's a very important component. And the learning is going to be focused on things we're doing. You might find like, I didn't need to do anything this week, I get it, I know how to do it. And then it's just a matter of implementation. And the amount of implementation is really going to be determined based on how much of a change you need. I might ask you to implement, I'd like you to exercise 30 minutes a day, 5 days a week. Well, I'm already exercising 6 days a week for an hour. Well, then your implementation is going to be 0,
Yeah.
right? Because you're already engaging.